Hi, this is EDU 108 Instructional Design and the discussion about Chapter 1, the first Instructional Design chapter. Let me go ahead and run the slideshow on this one. Okay, so initially, this first chapter takes a look at instructional design and technology from a historically, and what are its definitions. So, we'll just kind of touch on some of the things the text talks about. I'll add a few other things or other bits of information to it as well. So I'm just kind of following along with the screen here. Instructional design and instructional technology in one way or the other, has been around a long time, whether it was considered educational technology, instructional design, instructional technology. It started with people like Gagne and Skinner and developing an understanding how our behaviors work and how we learn and all of those things. So in '65, Gagne published The Conditions of Learning, and part of what was a main objective of that text, he analyzed learning objectives and related different classes of learning objectives to appropriate instructional designs. So he would match up. You would teach something. You would teach math, for instance, or you would teach math different than science, for instance. So if the learning objectives were to teach something in math, then the instructional design to teach that might be different than probably science isn't the best example. Probably English is a better example. So he related different classes of learning objectives to appropriate instructional designs. Now James Finn, also in the '60s, introduced a systems approach to designing instruction. And I really think about this as the systems, and I can relate this to the systems analysis and design model that we use to develop information systems. It really works hand in hand. It's very similar. So Searle stated that Finn was a father of the instructional design movement because he linked the theory of systems design to educational technology. So at this point, you're taking a theory and you're tying it into the technology that's available at the time. In this case, in the '60s, you would have had overhead projectors, you would have TV, you would have those types of things. So it's tying that theory of how people, how do people learn, the instructional design aspect to, the instruction aspect to the educational technology that was available. And as I go on, and thus encouraged the integrated growth of these related fields of study. It was Finn who made educational technologists aware that technology was as much a process as a piece of hardware. So in developing instructional materials, is it just the computer, the notebook, the webcam, the software to make this instructional design stuff work? Well, more importantly than that, it's what do the students need to learn? How do they learn it? How can you put together materials that will allow them to best learn, allow students to best learn material? And then you start thinking about, what kinds of tools and technologies is available to teach those students that particular concept. So instructional design and technology is perhaps more a process. I'll exaggerate probably, but perhaps more a process than the hardware and software and components to make it work. Now, with that said, think about technology there. Think about the improvement in technology over the last 15, 20 years. Now, that change, that evolution of technology, has really provided us with a lot more tools to really reach out and do instructional design and technology or instructional design more effectively. So there are a lot more tools available than when Finn and Gagne and those folks were working with these particular theories. Now, as we move along, the Commission on Instructional Technology created a report called To Improve Learning. So the first definition, which is an older view, is this. In its more familiar sense, it means the media born of the communications revolution, which can be used for instructional purposes alongside the teacher, textbook, and blackboard. The pieces that make up instructional technology include television, films, overhead projectors, computers, and other items of hardware and software. Okay, so that's the first definition related to the 70s and from the Commission on Instructional Technology. The second, now this is less familiar, instructional technology is more than the sum of its parts. It is a systematic way of designing, carrying out, and evaluating the whole process of learning and teaching in terms of specific objectives based on research on human learning and communication and employing a combination of human and non-human resources to bring about more effective instruction. So, this is starting to talk about it's a systematic way of designing instruction. So, a very process-oriented. You think about what do students need to learn first? What are the behaviors of learning? How do students learn? And then you can go about developing the materials. Now, also, it discusses the whole process of learning and teaching in terms of specific objectives based on research on human learning. So, once again, you go back to thinking about how do people learn best? What are the different learning styles? Are they visual learners? Are learners do they memorize better? How do people learn best? So, and then employing a combination of human and non-human resources to bring about more effective instruction. Okay, so we have two different definitions from this particular commission, and both are interesting. So, as we move on, we'll move on to AACT, which is the Association for Educational Communications and Technology, and they had a 94 definition and a 2008 definition. So, and this is kind of in summary, if you will. So in 94, AACT published Instructional Technology, the definitions and domains of the field. So that book defined instructional technology as a theory and practice of design. There we go, the theory and practice of design, development, utilization, management, and evaluation of processes and resources for learning. Well, one really important piece. Where does the analysis and technology come in? So it seems as if you need to analyze before you can design. In most of your systems development lifecycle, your ADDIE models, ADDIE, that you need to definitely analyze the situation first and then design. Now, there we go. And looking at the 2008 AACT definition, educational technology is a steady and ethical practice of facilitating learning and improving performance by creating, using, and managing appropriate technological processes and resources. So, two things. Facilitating learning. So, we're doing the things to try to make people learn better. Okay, and that's what instructional design and technology in a nutshell is all about. Creating ways for people to learn better. And then the end result is improving performance. Now, in education, when you're teaching in education, if you're a K-12 instructor or a higher ed instructor, are you improving performance? Well, I guess you are. Because those things that you're doing is improving the performance of students. Now, how about in the workplace, say training environments? Are you improving performance? Well, yes, absolutely you are. You're trying to teach people how to use a particular software system, for instance, so you are improving performance. So I guess that definition is accurate. They didn't use instructional technology, they used educational technology. So be that as it may. Now, our book's authors define this a little bit differently, and I'm going to read to my screen on the left here. The field of instructional design and technology, also known as instructional technology, encompasses the analysis of learning and performance problems and the design, development, implementation, evaluation, and management of instructional and non-instructional processes and resources intended to improve learning and performance in a variety of settings, particularly educational institutions and the workplace. The second part, professionals in the field of instructional design and technology often use systematic instructional design procedures and employ instructional media to accomplish their goals. Moreover, in recent years, they have paid increasing attention to non-instructional solutions to some performance problems. Research and theory related to each of these aforementioned areas is also an important part of the field. Now, let's take a look at this. So they do talk about the analysis of learning. Is analysis important? Why? Think about that. Is that analysis important? What do you do with it? How do you design something, an instructional system, if you don't analyze where the needs are? Through doing a needs assessment or a variety of other sort of processes. Now, secondly, educational institutions and the workplace, particularly educational institutions and the workplace. Are they the same? Are they different? Are there different ways of approaching, or are there different ways of approaching instruction for each separate environment? I would think off the top of my head that the workplace might be more specific in its needs. Say training, thinking about training. How do you develop training sessions? Okay, what do you need? So you probably need to have some video to show people how to do something. You probably develop an assessment. They can go back over this little test at the end, and you click on yes or no or true or false, and this is what the training said. Okay, and they can show people how to do things. Okay, so think about the educational environment, the educational institutions. Is that different than the workplace? Well, we teach students to do things. We teach them the processes. Usually with some of this instruction, you may go back and have an assessment that says, well, did you learn this? Did you answer false to this or true to this, or what happened? So I don't know if you followed me on that. I hope you did. My first question was, educational institutions in the workplace. Are they different? Well, yes, they are different. But as we think about it, they really aren't very different. They're more similar than dissimilar. Do you agree? I certainly think that they are more similar than dissimilar, although you may use some different strategies for different types of education and workplace. With that said, you may actually use additional and different unique strategies within separate educational institutions. For instance, at Helena College, you might use for the aviation program a different technique than you would for the computer technology program. So finally, how do systematic instructional design procedures improve the design of instruction? So we talk about the design and technology often use systematic instructional design procedures. How do these procedures improve the design of instruction? So does it relate to ADDIE? The ADDIE instructional design model, and with ADDIE you have an analysis, you have a design phase, you have a development, implementation, and evaluation. So when they talk about systematic design, that's what they're talking about. When you have a computer-based information system, you often use a systems development lifecycle, where you have an analysis, design, implementation, and basically a feedback, maintenance kind of phase. This is the very same thing. So a systematic design is very important for ensuring creating a very thorough type of instructional design environment. So our conclusion is we talked about a little bit about the history of instructional design and technology. We took a look at historical and current definitions. And then just briefly, talked about ADDIE and SDLC the instructional design models. Okay, so thank you.